I'm delighted to welcome Jose Pereira onto our podcast today. Jose is a best-selling author, international speaker, and resilience coach, a former CEO of Citgo Petroleum and survivor of nearly 5 years of wrongful imprisonment as part of the Citgo Six. He transforms his experience he's been through into lessons on leadership, faith, and purpose. He hosts the Building Resilience podcast and Unbreakable Leaders TV show. He leads the nonprofit Angels Helping on Earth and continues inspiring others through his best-selling books From Hero to Villain and Unbreakable. Jose, it's such a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Dan. Thank you.
So I'd love to start off our conversation by hearing from you a little bit about your career. Have you worked in petroleum your entire career?
Yes, yes, yes. For your audience, I'm Venezuelan born, and Venezuela, used to be one of the biggest oil and gas producer of the world, but because of this regime that was there, all the economy was destroyed. But back in the 70s, the 80s, Venezuela was the second oil producer of the world. So it's so big at that level. It had a production of 3 million barrels. And I come from a family that my granddad, my dad, me, and my son, we are four generations of oil and gas workers of Venezuela. So I started my career when I was 21. I graduated when I was 21, and I began working in the national oil company of Venezuela. One of the But that time, Venezuela didn't have a national oil company; it had four operators. I began working in one of them.
Mm.
After being there like 10 years after, they merged the four and became today what is PDVSA, Petróleos de Venezuela. That is the national oil company.
Yeah.
And PDVSA, during the 80s, they bought a company here in the US that is called Citgo Petroleum. So Citgo Petroleum, the people that maybe are not familiar, today is the sixth biggest refinery here in the US, with three big refinery complex, almost 1 million barrels processed by day, and more than 6,000 gas stations. So it's big. And I finalized my career path. I was transferred here to the US as an executive of the company. And at the end of the career, I became the CEO of the company. So for me, it was a big deal at that moment in 2017, becoming the CEO of one of the biggest refineries here in the US, being an immigrant. So for me, it was really a big deal.
Wow. And so tell me a little bit about what happened more recently in your career.
Well, the story is very long, okay? Because as I mentioned, in 2017, I became the CEO of the company. But during that time was during the first term of Donald Trump. So Donald Trump was in office here in the US, and he was really trying to throw out Maduro. He was really trying to kick off this guy because he didn't like Maduro. He always said that he was a communist, that he was ruining the country, which is true, which is
Mm.
true. But of course, in his first term, he could not do it, but he did it now. Well, the spectacular way he did it. So, but that time, I was, as I said, Citgo belonged to. I was here in the U.S. Donald Trump fighting with Maduro. I in the middle. I didn't like that. I didn't like that because even it was not with me. I saw that when you see the things that are not going good. I talked that time with my wife, and I asked her, you know what? I already had 35 years in the company. I think it's time to get retired. So I retired. And I flew to Venezuela. I talked with my boss. I asked him that I wanted to get retired. And back and forward, he approved my retirement. So now we're in October 2017. I'm in my retiring mode, preparing my new life. And I received a phone call to make a presentation in Caracas. So they asked me to go to Caracas the day after to make a presentation. By that time, we were revamping a refinery in Aruba, the Aruba Island, in
Yeah.
Aruba. So that project was really going very well, and they asked me to go to make a presentation of the status of the revamping of the refinery. So I didn't see nothing wrong. For me, it was normal business. I Day after I go to Caracas, I'm in a big crowd making my presentation. My last presentation before getting retired. The plane were waiting me in the airport, coming back to Houston and beginning my new life. It never happened because the presentation resulted to be an ambush. So they took me and my 5 vice presidents that were with me, that we were, the 6 of us were Venezuelan Americans, and they took us and they kidnapped us and they accused us to be spies, American spies. And we stayed there during that situation because we became political parts of the situation. And that's why I stayed 5 years. So the last 5 years, I was thrown in a dungeon in Venezuela, waiting to get a negotiation between the US and Venezuela. And there's where the story of the Citgo Six came, because that's the name that the press put in. Our case was very notorious. If you go back to the 2018, 2019, 2020, we were really big in the press because our families, they took that, they did a lot of noise in the press.
Yeah.
The case became really noisy, and the press always was talking about our case. The US government got really involved trying to get us released, and the press put us that name because we were 6 guys. So they didn't want it to be telling the story. So we became like a brand. We became the Citgo Six. So that's how everybody here in the US, when you talk about the Citgo Six, oh, I remember the story. You know.
How did you cope? It must how did you get through those 5 years?
Well, you have to read my book because
Yeah.
in my book I tell
I'm
the
sure you'll
story
share it with
because
us at the end of the interview.
because the story is complex because we went through a lot of phases. You know, the first year we, as I said, we were 6 guys. The first year we were separated the 6.
Right.
So the first year I was in a solitary confinement. I was
Mm.
placed in a jail they called the submarine. So I was locked, totally locked, with now no windows, and there was no running water, no fresh air. I was like literally living in a hell. So
Yeah.
that was my first year. My first year. That year, I always try to think how we did it. And believe me, the only answer that I have is God.
Mm.
It's God. Because, you know, I could have died. I went through a lot of illness.
Yeah.
I began to starve because I didn't have food. I
Yeah.
lost 100 pounds that time.
Wow.
100 pounds. We suffer. I can tell you, I suffer, eruption in my skin with scabies.
Mm.
I suffered pneumonia. I suffered bronchitis. I suffered a heart attack. I suffered COVID. So I went through a lot of things. And believe me, I don't know how, for me, it's a miracle that we could survive that. After the first year, because during that time, the political tension began to escalate between the two governments, and it began to go so bad that they recalled the 2 ambassadors. It's funny because today they're reopening the embassy in Venezuela after almost 8 years. So
Yeah.
they closed the embassy because our case, and they're reopening now because they took Maduro. So
Yeah.
now the US is reopening the embassy. So we our case was what created the condition to get disrupted the relation between the two governments. So now we're without no embassy.
Mm.
We saw us left behind, and by that time, as I said, our family were talking very involved with the U.S. government, trying to get us back. So they talked with the UN, said that the UN intervened, and there's where they decided to kind of relax a little bit our case, and they put us the 6 together. So after the second year, we were stayed together until we were released, and
Yeah.
that helped us because now we were 6 guys
With
trying
each
to
other,
survive,
right? Yeah.
trying to survive.
Yeah. Yeah. So you know, this podcast is all about partnerships. And
Mhm.
so I wanted to ask you about the bonds that you formed with the other executives in jail and how that kept you sane. Can you talk a bit
Well,
about
let
that?
me. Yeah, this is funny because I remember that the first day that they opened the door and they asked me to take all my belongings that I was gonna be transferred to another area. This guy never told you nothing, so everything was surprise. So
Yeah.
every time they came, you that in that moment is that you knew what was going to happen. So they told me you have 5 minutes to take all your belongings. You're gonna be transferred to other area. So when
Mm.
I go to the other area with all my stuff and I walk in the room, I saw the other five guys there. So
Yeah.
it was shocking. We were all of us in very bad shape. Literally, we were like skeletons, and we were in very very bad shape. And our first reaction was hug us, and we began to cry. And I always mention this because we were not friends. We were not friends. We were colleagues, but not friends.
Yeah.
And I knew these guys because of they work with me. I saw them in meetings, in the board meetings, but
Yeah.
some time to time, hey, how's your wife? So very normal work relation. We were not friends, so now we had the opportunity to begin to know each other, and
Yeah.
we found something that, believe me, for me is kind of a miracle because we discovered that the six of us had more than 30 years married each. So we had long-term marriage, the six of us. And
Yeah.
that really created a strong bond because now we are connected because of the families. So
Mm.
now our connection began to get really strong because it got, family ties.
Yeah.
Everybody was always talking about the kids, their grandkids, their wife, the memories, the travels, the good time with the family. And that made us, to we created something that we call the survivor plan. Because picture this, we were six guys, all of
Mm.
us uh, executive, more with 30 plus year career, a lot of brains, a lot of brains.
Mm.
So we begin to create a plan how to survive because we prepare ourselves for the long run. So we
Mm.
decided to create a plan to keep our mind busy all day long and take care of our mental health. And
Mm.
that we create again a strong bond because we begin to give the leadership to each of them according to their expertise. For
Mm.
example, we didn't have running water. We had a
Yeah.
tank that was replenished every week. So we needed to have a control on the use of the water for the next replenishment. So one of my guys, he was a tank expert. He
Right.
handled tanks in the oil and gas. So that was his duty. So he
Yeah.
was taking care that we never run of water. And believe me, we never run of water. The
So
next
once
year,
you ran out of water, they wouldn't replenish it.
yeah, every week there came a vacuum truck and replenished every week. So we needed to control the use of the water. We use the water through bottles.
Right.
Everything was with bottles. So
Right.
and he had a very tight control of the use of the bottle. So
Right.
you have we have 15 bottles per day,
Yeah.
only 15. So you needed to control the use of the 15 bottles to do everything.
Yeah.
So to everything. So and this guy was having a deep control on that. Well, another of my guy, he was a marathon runner, and today he's still running marathon. By the way,
Mm.
Jorge, he took care of our physical preparation. So he did a physical routine every day about push-ups, static running,
Mm.
meditation. So one of our guys, he was the PR VP, the
Mm.
public relation VP. So he was the guy that he took care of anything that we needed to communicate to our family. So we gave the leadership to each of them according to their expertise. And I
Mm.
was like kind of the coordinator of the group.
Yeah.
So and everybody respect the line of authority of each of them. One of my guys, for example, he was a very Christian guy. He was who introduced to us to begin to do biblical studies and daily prayers, and he
Yeah.
became like the pastor of the group.
Yeah.
So
So
we
everyone had a very specific strength where
yes,
they
and we respected that.
yeah,
This is key because this is something that today is part of my coaching program. Where I say that when you're in a business, you have to respect the line of expertise, because that's a big mistake that sometimes when you're in a CEO position, you think that you know everything, and that's
yeah,
not true. You don't know everything. You need
yeah,
to respect that line of expertise of the
yeah,
expert on the and follow that leadership.
yeah,
Because that for us that worked perfect.
yeah, yeah. You have to have humility and know where your limits lie.
It's part of the humility that recognize that the leadership of the other, because that is the knowledge. So you follow that expertise.
Yeah. So tell me, what other ways did you partner with you? What other partnerships did you create together that helped you
Well,
succeed?
as I said, we did several things. For example, things that today you can find ridiculous, but for us was key.
Mm,
The morning breakfast. So now we're six guys in a very tiny place, but now that we are receiving food from our families,
mm,
because there was no food in the country. There was lack of food because of the sanctions. So our family began to provide us food. In my case, my family, my eldest son moved to Colombia, that is the border with Venezuela, and he was providing food from Colombia to Venezuela. Somebody picked up the food and they cooked, and they sent it to me, cooked food. So everybody now is receiving food. So we organized our breakfast in a way that everybody took breakfast alone, each one of them. I was the first one, for example. I took breakfast 6 a.m. So I had a small table, a chair. Everybody was in their bed. The lights turned off. I was with my food, having a time, relaxed with my food, and praying and meditating.
mm.
And that became key because that was the starting of the day.
Yeah.
We started with that. So after that, we rested and then we did the exercise. Let me tell you, we stayed like 3 hours doing exercise.
Yeah.
At some point, I began to be very well trained.
Mm,
And we did meditation. Where by that time we were allowed to have books. We were reading a lot. I had
mm.
never read so much like I read at that time.
Yeah.
I began to smuggle letters with my wife. That became my book, by the way.
Mm,
So I was writing letters. We were having is during that 2020. It was during the pandemic. We were sanitizing the room on a daily basis. We have a schedule.
mm.
Every day somebody was in charge of sanitizing, so everybody knew what to do. You
Yeah.
didn't you didn't need to say, hey, you have to. No,
Yeah.
no.
Very,
We
very
had a
rigorous
routine.
schedule. It's a very
We
rigorous
had
schedule.
a very severe, strict schedule. And
Mm,
the schedule final, and we were having fun. We began to play domino.
mm.
Kind of at 7 p.m., we were having a domino tournament, 2 hours of domino play. And at 9, we were reading the Bible and praying. And we prayed until 11 p.m. and we
Wow.
went to rest in peace. So now the days begin to go really fast because that began to be a daily routine. It was a daily basis. We
Yeah.
were like hamster in the cage doing things.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. I think it's a real lesson for entrepreneurs because a lot of the people who listen to our podcast are people who work by themselves. And so I think they struggle with maybe a lack of routine, but also they struggle in terms of motivation. And it's much easier when you have people by your side.
Well, this is something that in part of my coaching, this is exactly what I say. That there
Mm.
are several things that for me today are key in my coaching. I do this coaching. This is my coaching. It's called Unbreakable Leadership. And this is a workbook. Okay.
Yeah.
So what I do, the
Yeah.
first thing that I try to understand when I have a client, first thing that I life balance. First question,
Mm.
how is your life balance? I made them to be honest with themselves,
Mm.
because mostly the people there, if you're an entrepreneur, you know that happened, that you are so focused in your business that at some point you don't take care of your family,
Yeah.
and you don't have that balance. So you're so focused in being successful that you don't
Mm.
have a balance. And then this is the first question that I do. Then comes that the thing, that communication, and then
Yeah.
comes that relationship, because people tend to do things alone.
Yeah.
And maybe you are struggling because you're running a business but you need people to support you. It can
Yeah.
be your wife, it can be your, I don't know, the people that are with you.
Mm.
And the routine, creating the routine
Yeah.
is so important to create a routine.
Yeah. I really see that. So how did your release come about in the end? How did...
Well, after 5 years, as I said, during those 5 years happened a lot of things because we were caught in the geopolitical thing happening at that moment between Trump and Maduro. As
Hmm.
I said, it unfolded with the capture of Maduro. But the point was that every time the negotiation was going wrong, it was going wrong for us. If the
Right.
negotiation was going better, it was going. So we were like in the carousel, ups and down. And at
Yeah.
some point in that fourth year, uh, Trump was no longer in office. Now it's the Joe Biden era. We had a blessing that the person that was appointed by Trump on our negotiation was
Yeah.
ratified by Joe Biden, the same person. He
Yeah.
wasn't a former ambassador called Roger Carson. So
Yeah.
Ambassador Carson was approved to go to Venezuela in the fourth year to begin to do direct negotiation.
Yeah.
And that fourth year, he began to have direct negotiation because Maduro was asking a lot for us. He
Yeah.
was asking to get lifted the sanctions. He was asking to get lifted an oil embargo. He was asking to give them back a drug lord that at the end he was released because he was swapped with other prisoners. We came back through a prisoner swap with the two nephews of Maduro that were here in a federal jail here, accused to be drug lords because they were found with 400 tons of coke. No?
Oh my goodness.
So they were here in a federal court in Florida,
Yeah.
and Joe Biden gave them a presidential pardon, and they swapped us. So that's the way I could come back.
So you came home to the States, and it must have been an incredible feeling. 5 years.
Well, for me was this our story never ended easily because after they decided to release us,
Mm.
we were putting up in an airplane. It was funny for me because we came back in a PDVSA airplane. I flew in those planes all my life, so I knew very well those planes. So when I was loaded in the plane, I know it was a PDVSA plane.
Yeah.
So we were loaded in that plane, and we flew to a Caribbean island in the middle of nowhere called San Vicente and Grenadines, and we
Yeah.
landed in that island,
Mm.
and then the U.S. plane landed there, and there's where the swap happened in an island in the Caribbean in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
So now we were transferred to the U.S. plane, and we landed here in a military base in San Antonio, Texas, called Army Brooks, and we
Mm.
stayed there 2 weeks in a decompression program that decompression program that they do for the missing of action and the prisoner of war. So they give us the same treatment. They treat us like prisoner of war, and that's and well, and after that, I was back.
Yeah. Tell me, how do you go about, how did you go about setting up the consultancy you have now?
Well, that's a great story because when I came back, I didn't have a clue what to do with my life.
Right. So
No
you're
clue.
planning to retire.
I not only retired, I always say that I felt like coming back in a time machine
Mm.
because I came back in the post-COVID world. I didn't see the COVID because we were in lock during the COVID. So when I come back, I see what happened to the people after the COVID.
Right.
Here, the U.S. has been a big issue. The
Yeah,
post-COVID,
yeah. Instead of being locked down, you were locked in.
we were locked in. Correct. We were locked in. So, and I didn't stay months. I stayed years.
Yeah.
And without no communication, so I didn't know what was going in the outside world. So I was literally coming in a time
Wow.
machine, and I got connected after one month. I came back. You see this flag? This is a flag that is the hosted and wrongfully detained flag.
Hmm.
My family, by that time, has started with another 20 families a foundation called the Bring Our Family Home campaign to get us
Hmm.
released. So they got together these 20 families, families that had hostage in Iran, in China, in Russia, in Syria, Afghanistan, Myanmar, Cuba, and Venezuela, in all
Yeah.
these countries. So those families got together, but because by that time my wife was having monthly meetings in the White House with the vice president of the U.S. At that level, what was our case? By the time the vice president was Mike Pence, so they met with Mike Pence every month. Every month
Right.
they had a meeting with Mike Pence because they took really the leadership of the situation. They really were working hard to bring about. The problem was that Maduro was asking too much for us. And,
Yeah.
and the problem that happened when you get caught in this type of thing that is called the hostage diplomacy is that it became so difficult, the negotiation,
Mm.
because are two states trying to negotiate your release. So normally the relationship is at that level. And for
Yeah.
example, here in the US, you need bipartisan Congress approvals to get
Mm.
anything to be done. So you need to have Republicans and Democrats getting to
Yeah.
it. So it began to be a total geopolitical thing. So
Wow.
now I went to, after 1 month, I flew to Washington to say thanks to all the congressmen and all the people that worked hard to bring us back. And and when I came to Washington, I didn't realize that I was the first hostage that had returned going to Washington. And when they knew that I was going, it was funny because I was there and it was supposed to be thanks. And when I came, I saw all the press. It was CNN, Washington, all the big press, all the media was there for me. 1 month, and I see all those cameras.
Mm.
I was like confused. But I had the opportunity to meet a lot of families that were going through this tragedy.
Mm.
And they saw me, they begin to see me like a beacon of hope for them.
Mm.
And I begin the relation with them. And that's where I found that this could be really helpful to help others. That's why I begin to start the idea of to create this coaching program. And my coaching, because what I did is I transformed the things I went through in with my previous leadership experience. I came from the oil
Yeah.
and gas, and that's how I create my coaching program. So my coaching program is very unique. I try to tailor something that is based on things that for me really work, that
Mm.
I tailor for the
Yeah.
entrepreneurs or the CEOs. And it works. It worked for me. I always say, if this worked for me, it worked for you.
Yeah. Very strong focus on resilience. You talked about
Yes.
you talked about
Well, the resilience is key in all of this.
yeah.
I always talk that those leaders, there are two things that are important in a leadership: the resilience and the adaptability.
Yeah.
Because today world, that those leaders that have the capacity to be adaptive are the ones that are going to survive. And let me tell you, here in the US, this is a big issue because
Yeah.
the Americans are very square,
Mm.
very very focused in procedures, very fixed mindset.
Mm.
It's not easy to they open their mind when they talk. Oh, you have to think outside the box. So
Yeah.
so if I'm Venezuelan, we don't have box. We think and act. So here is the big issue. The people here really struggle with that.
Yeah. So tell me, how I'm interested to hear about the partnerships you've built to get the word out about your program. And so what tell me, we talked about the partnerships you built with your fellow hostages in prison. I'm interested to hear about the partnerships you built when you launched it
After,
to get to
yeah,
get
yeah. When
to
I
spread the
started
word.
my practice, one of the things, because of course, because my case was so unique that
Mm.
the people wanted to hear about me, and I began to attend meetings, conference. The first thing I was invited was to talk in the UN. So I had the
Mm.
opportunity to go and talk in the UN Assembly, and I
Mm.
was invited also to talk in the Congress. So
Yeah.
so that so when I had the opportunity, that began to give me visibility. So the media began to contact me, and that made me like a visible. And then the people begin to ask me to go to make conference, and I have a very good friend that helped me craft a message. I created a message that was called From Captivity to Freedom. And I began to get invited to do conference. At that time, I was writing the book. So the book became kind of the lead magnet to that, and that drive to the coaching. So one thing began to drive to the other. And today I do my coaching. Basically, I do it here in Houston. Basically, Houston is a hyper big city. This is
And it's
a
the major oil center.
see, this is the Metro Oil Center. So I have a big crowd of entrepreneurs in that area that I coach them on a weekly basis.
Fantastic, fantastic. And who else? Who else have you sort of partnered with to get the word out about your program?
Oh, well, I have partnered with a lot of people. For example, in my speaking career, oh, it's incredible how I have been involved. I can countless groups. Today, I'm not only part of a speaking bureau my leader of the speaking bureau is a very well known here in the celebrity space. He lives in Las Vegas. His name is Bruce Mary. But besides working with Bruce, I have partnership with many groups here. For example, there is a group called Bree Talks that is in Dallas. There is a group called the Speaker Playhouse that is in New York. And there is a group called the Speaker, it's the Speaker Clubhouse, and the other is the Speaker Palooza. So I today I today are connected to these groups. We normally are doing things together. They invite me to the events. Sometimes I invite them. So we have created a very
You're
good.
part of a lot of speaking group. You're part of a lot of speaking groups now.
Oh yes. In that area, I have done a lot of partnerships.
Okay, fantastic. So, if our audience would like to find out more about you and your program, where should they go?
I have my webpage that is called joseconnect.com. If you go to joseconnect.com, you will find the landing page for my speaking. You will find my landing page for my books. You will find my landing page for my coaching. And you will find my landing page for my podcast and my TV show, because today I do a weekly TV show in Spanish. It's in Spanish because I do the podcast in English. It's called Building Resilience, and I interview leaders that have gone through adversity and are becoming true resilient, because I like to showcase the resilience in the person. And the show, I interview Hispanic leaders that are remarkable what they're doing in the community here in Houston, because of the show I have it here in Houston, but it's aired all over the U.S. and Mexico. So the outreach of the show is in the U.S. and Mexico.
That's fantastic. I'd love to hear a final word from you. So to our listeners here who are particularly interested in how they can form partnerships to help them to grow their business, to help them to thrive, what would be your final piece of advice on partnerships?
I always mention to the person that I'm coaching that the first thing that I ask them, besides saying they have a balance in their life, is that make the honest question to their inner voice, if they're following their passion, if they're following their purpose. Because this is one of the things. Sometimes people start a business that is not their calling. Starting a business because they think they can make money and that's it. But when you start a business because it's your passion, you will see it in a different way. For example, if you feel passion, if you love to, I don't know, whatever business, something that you love it, that's what you really love it, you will do it with passion. And what I tell the person is that after finding that you're really following your call, is pursue that dream. Really don't see you where you are today, because sometimes the entrepreneur has struggled starting a business. Sometimes they go through a lot. Here in the US, being a small business is a big deal. I can tell you, because my wife had a franchise that we closed it because she's working now with me, but she stayed years with the franchise and she struggled a lot with the business. It's difficult here in the US. Even you see a lot of businesses, that small businesses struggle a lot. So I tell the people, see if you're following your purpose, And if the answer is yes, pursue your dream and never give up. That's my final word. Never give up. Never give up, because the people tend to give up very, very easy. The first time they fail, they say, that's it. And now, my friend, this is only the middle of the road.
Yeah.
This is not the end.
As Sonas, it's much harder to give up when you have people around you.
Of course, of course, of course. Well, in my case, let me tell you, I'm here because of my family and God.
Yeah.
Period. I'm here because my family and God. Yeah. Because if it wasn't because of my faith in God that kept me moving, and my family that was pushing hard to bring me back, I would not be talking today.
Jose, it's been a really fascinating discussion. Thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Bye.